Yeah, you can. I will present now. Then you can use your PC if you have. Yeah, I'm using my laptop. If you have HDMI.
No, I have only VGA.
There's a VGA connector.
VGA. Okay. Okay. Yeah, they have a.
Do you want a few more minutes, or do you want to get started?
Okay, I don't know. Yeah, maybe we can. It's better to start maybe 4 minutes.
Ok.
It starts 5 minutes after. Ok? 4 minutos.
Sim.
Esperamos bocadinho.
Estamos às 10h05.
10h05, não é?
Sim.
Eu se calhar sinto-me aqui, não é?
Diz?
Sinto-me aqui e depois entro, não é? Não vale a pena estarmos aqui os dois de pé enquanto estamos à espera. Yeah. Yeah, the aim of the bridge linking is linking others between formal education, lifelong learning and education enterprises. And we are working also have two big initiatives that on the enterprise market, and the other one, the project now, is a big platform. We are starting now the implementation, the infrastructure implementation. Yeah. No, we were preparing because the selling cycle sometimes is not. This project we have not launched. We have done only some pilots. We will see here some real life pilots, but it's not scaling now. We will try to scale. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Miguel is a project director of this project from APDC. And he challenged me to implement the infrastructure and to develop all the contents and all the engagement activities. Okay. He already has a company more on the pedagogic side, on reskilling, the pedagogic, intelligent amplification mentorship, and he's in charge of joining all the soft skills activities and the social activities with special components of leadership, coaching, design thinking, and other kind of approaches. I am, yeah. This company, I'm working also. Yeah, yeah. I do all the technology and the content develop, the digital content develop, and the engagement activities. And APDC is the sponsor, the customer, the connection to the customer network. And that is it. Yeah, we do some metaphor with the SpaceX and so on. Yeah, Miguel was working to San Diego, please. We can do another meeting to the European, and there are lots of people from Asia also here. Like, yeah. Very nice. And actually we will be a very good spot there because they are a university. Miguel is working also with that university, Nova, School of Business and Economics, and they will launch a new campus nearby the sea. I saw the social. I saw the impressive. Okay, we can start.
Good morning. Our first talk of the morning is APDC Digital Academy, the Tech-Driven Learning Platform by Carlos Gomes and Miguel Moreira. Let's give them a hand.
Thank you very much. Good morning, all. Thank you for taking time and come and visit us. Thank you to edX also to giving us the stage. We're very happy to be here and to share with you our experience. let me tell you, the APDC is an industry board, is the largest industry board on digital in our country, Portugal, where we come from. Basically, it puts together about 100, more than 100 large companies. We're talking about companies on the digital side of the business. Could be telecom operators, could be software companies. And basically, they came to us concerned about the reskilling of their employees. It's believed to be a big theme. We found that was challenging. My name is Miguel Moreira. I've been working on the business side of the digital. I come from the corporate side, and I've created a small company called IAM to actually design courses and to design new education approach. Carlos Gomes, which is here, is going to be presenting with me, and Carlos has partnered with me with the technology side that we're going to explain on the next 20 minutes. Well, we talked about naming it the Tech Human Learning Platform because the challenge that was to be addressed, reskilling current employees, it felt it was slightly different than, for example, new forms to actually train young people or to actually put back into the job market people that kind of left because they were not skilled enough. So we kind of focused or tried to focus on designing something in terms of preventing something that has not happened yet. So sometimes there's not a sense of urgency that the workforce is getting obsolete. So we try to set up a model that could address that anticipation of need. Today we're going to touch on these 4 points. We're going to talk a lot about amplifying education. We believe that the current model is not sufficiently powerful to actually reach some segments of population that they, like I said, they don't feel the need yet, and sometimes the model is not so, and there's not a mechanism that it's effective enough to actually maintain them in the game and able to actually reskill themselves and to transform into new professions. Obviously, we believe this is a serious problem, and sometimes we tend to be fooled by the statistics because we look at the statistics, we see economy growing at 3-4%, 5% a year, not bad. We look at unemployment rates, you know, the lowest, especially in North America, and even in Europe. I think we are at a good cycle. We see unemployment rates reaching the lowest, but again, I think we have the risk to be fooled by the averages, and a lot of time we look at the averages, and we don't see that, for example, this mid-pay segment has been decreasing buying power for a long time. We don't realize that actually when we look at statistics like workforce participation, a lot of these people that left the workforce never have the chance to go back, and they fall out of the statistics numbers. And we see a phenomena which is underemployment, which is a lot of people get a job that they are probably 2 or 3 notches more qualified to do, and they accept it, and they count as a job. We don't see that on the statistics. So we see there's like an hidden problem that a lot of people are not aware of, and a lot of people don't really want to talk about it because I think it's not easy to solve. So this is a little bit the problem in the segment that we are trying to address. Obviously, automation is the big deal, and this is great. I mean, we love technology. Everybody, I guess, in here love technology also. We believe that the power of actually automating, let's face it, not very value-added jobs, not very interesting jobs, it's tremendous, but there's a price to pay with it, and the price to pay is exactly what are these people going to do? How can they learn something that actually can put together with the power of the system, the technology, to actually have a positive contribution to a company and to the society? And this is a big deal. This slide usually is applied to inequality and to the polarization of wealth and income, but I think we're talking about in our world, there's a lot of polarization, especially on the knowledge and the access to knowledge. And we see that there's a lot of knowledge that few can access, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And exactly, we all in the room are on the right side of this diagram, but a lot of people are being left behind, and I think this is really something to address. How can we in terms of education, design something that can actually balance this scale and can, in a friendly and effective way, bring knowledge and new skills to people that are going to need them. Even some have not realized it yet. Well, who are we targeting? And again, it's a little bit this. You know, we talked about the young guys. We call it the starters, which is a problem. And I think MOOCs is doing a good job. Things like we saw yesterday from the Georgia Tech and so forth. I think it's very remarkable combining traditional education with MOOCs. Obviously, we're talking about the older guys that kind of leave the workforce. And sometimes in Europe, when you leave the workforce and you are 45, you basically, it's impossible to get back into the workforce, into a job, because you're probably excluded of about 80 or 90% of the job applications all of a sudden. And if you look at it, 45 years old, you're probably halfway through your working career. There's 24 or at least 20 more years to go. So actually, I think this is a problem that needs to be addressed. But the really big problem, which we believe it's the huge problem, is what we call here the reskillers. We talk about the 28 to 45 prime age people that are kind of left behind. I mean, their skill set is not enough. They've lost the practice and the habit to actually keep them updated, and the company, the state, have not yet, we believe, found a way to actually address this segment. So amplifying, it's what we're trying to do. I mean, our take on it is to actually combine technology in the MOOC and e-learning with classroom training in a way that we call a journey. We kind of use the space metaphor because we believe that there's a lot of similarities about the effort that really takes to actually take a spaceship out of the atmosphere and take it into orbit. And we really need to put it as a complex set of activities that have to work together in order to get and to reach that objective. Well, trying to, in a more structured way, the slide's probably too small, but we can see that the problems and the challenges are here. So we have very high educated people, but a lot of people that don't get nothing, this polarization that I was telling about. We still believe that education comes in an early stage and you never have to go back and update your skills. Obviously, that's not right. When we talk about acquiring digital skills, which is fantastic and it's absolutely mandatory, we tend to forget that in a work environment, human skills are not only probably the skills that you use the most, but looking at the future, especially in an automated world, is probably the ones that you're going to require to actually make the difference. I think we all agree on that. The fourth is that how can we make an education system, a reskilling system, that is friendly to the people that usually are quite away from it and have lost their practice on engaging with learning new knowledge. The social and fun element, we believe that in order to get high engagement of students and to be effective, it has to be something that it's very, I would say, enjoyable, and it's not so linear that education, it's an enjoyable experience. And again, gratification. We believe that we have to figure out something that can return to somebody that is acquiring that skill short-term gratification, because usually we look at long-term gratification, but short-term sometimes is what drives our decision in order to acquire that. So we kind of build our model focused on three dimensions. We apologize, this is a little bit complex, but we believe this is a complex problem also. In terms of the dimensions, we believe that we should address the physical, the where it happens, and clearly in the classroom, but also everywhere, let's say, using technology. So I think the combination and this blended of in the classroom and online it's a good combination. We kind of have a rule of thumb about 70% online, 30% in the classroom. That's the model that we are testing. Also, what is the content? And the content, like I said before, combination of digital skills, but also combining with human skills. And we know that course design have kind of make two worlds totally apart. Either you go STEM and you acquire technical skills, or you go into humanistics and you acquire human skills. And the two together is not something that is easy to find, but we believe it's a powerful combination. And lastly, what puts it together? And we believe technology, and again, we're using Open edX platform, and we're using some other pieces of technology to increase the engagement of the students with, let's say, the learning experience, and trying to put in elements of social and human bonding energy to actually put it all together. So this is a little bit the model that we're trying to combine, and we're going to show you a little bit an example. So we're trying to design a friendly open model. We're trying to, the challenge for the student to be not so easy but not so difficult, and we have to establish levels of proficiency that are challenging for the people to actually progress. Again, we believe that combining human with digital, it's a powerful and kind of get into our emotional side, which is very important, and trying to address the other ones in a way that is described here. Like we think, and we're totally in agreement that micro certification could be a solution, but also we have to find a way to actually give value on the short term to those certificates that people have, either through pay raise, either to access to a different job, or either using more creative ways that we also looking at. So we grouped these training programs as journeys. We talked about the data science journey, cybersecurity journey, artificial intelligence journey, and they combine the three elements. Human skills that we're talking about things like critical thinking, creativity, curiosity, empathy, and so forth. So we heard this before. We have not seen this combined with the others. I'm going to hand over to Carlos so we can make a small explanation about how the technology is supporting this, and can explain a little bit this journey. So the journey, it's got stages, it's got different elements. It can be a technical element, it could be a classroom element, and so forth. So it's we call it journey because it's basically a program that it blends online with offline, and trying to, in duration that usually is about 10 to 14 weeks, trying to get you into a destination which will give you a certificate in something that actually you can use in your professional life. So, Carlos.
So, thank you, Major Tom. So, that was a challenge that APDC and Miguel launched to Bridge LK, was to provide a solution to support in the friendly and engaging learning experience, to bring all of these elements together in one platform and one experience. So we look at the market, and it shows Open edX as a learning management system, and the way to connect all the pieces and integrate all the pieces together. And for the learning engagement, we adopt GFoundry, that is a digital engagement solution to engage employees, partners, and customers. And we use GFoundry to the learning engagement activities. So let me show some examples. We walked a lot to be here on the integrations, on the user experience, or the learner experience. We have a long journey to walk also. on the left, you can see the Open edX interface, and on the right, you have the learning engagement activities. The objective of the learning engagement is to have like a personal trainer that will help the learner to keep the pace, to know where he is, the track that he needs to walk, and help him during all the journey. Okay, using the missions, the challenges, badges and rewards. Okay, let me give you some examples. The first one is the learner mission. You have seen the journey of this digital data science academy. So the learner will receive push notifications to inform what is the next step, what is the homework that he needs to prepare for the next session, for the physical session. Okay, we have the mobile interface, and then we have integrated on Open edX all the gamification elements during all the course sequence. Okay, so we have a set of features to promote collaboration between learners and had the ability of a learner to challenge a mate for a kind of battle, before a class, and promote collaboration. You have some examples. You can have it on the mobile phone or even inside the platform. And we have also rewards. We believe that we must have also not only badges but physical rewards. You can have an experience, a learning experience. I have here a pretty good example, like a visit to Portugal or Montreal Jazz Festival. So you can use these elements, these game elements, to engage the learners along the journey. Okay. The other point that we recognize a key on engagement is the recognition. So people can can recognize some soft skills, technical skills with the peers, and get some endorsements also. So now we will explain how this happens in real. On the classroom.
Thank you, Carlos. Just obviously the physical side, we believe that the physical space, it's more effective if it's designed to serve a purpose. So kind of a testing with specific and special providers, this concept of, we call it the learning capsule, basically trying to put together a set of technologies, but also sometimes low technology to actually make it a very collaborative way that people can share experience, that can work together, that can interface with groups, or it's the ideal to actually run like a group bonding or energy activity. So we also trying to experiment a little bit on the physical side, trying to get this concepts going. Just a small video of a pilot that we have done last year that shows just 20 seconds, a little bit the environment that we're trying to create physically. Nothing especially fancy, but trying to kind of put people close to each other and get human energy and human bonding happening there. So just to give you a little bit a flavor of that. Is this easy? Not at all. This is really challenging, especially the segment that we're trying to address. And the way the companies look at it. We kind of paying a lot of attention to it and trying to dedicate a lot of time to actually understand this. And we see that the objectives on the long term are right. I mean, if you look at, there are like 3 groups of stakeholders here: governments, companies, and the professionals. We believe that there's on the long term, everybody's in agreement. We have to do this, we have to get new skills, jobs are going to go away, but how can we make them a call to action, a sense of urgency to actually do it on the short term? And that's a disconnect that we feel, that this disconnect between the long term and the short term. When we look at the solutions, I think the three stakeholders have to be engaged, and we need to kind of bridging this long term with the short term. How? We don't know yet. You know, we're testing multiple ideas. Some of them are probably stupid, but others maybe we'll figure it out, because we tend to look at things that are going on right now as kind of almost with the invisible hand of the market that will fix it, you know. But like on data privacy and so forth, like we have seen in the last 3-4 months, we have seen that it's not working, you know. So maybe we need the visible hand of the regulation in the state to actually kind of start this program. I mean, who's responsible to reskill a workforce? A company that has been employing the person for 30 years, the individual, the state, or the three of them? How can we set up a set of phenomena, conditions to actually make this three-party to work together? Maybe it's tax breaks, maybe it's a mandatory, maybe it's quota, or maybe you automatically have the capability to redeem an additional skill in a pay raise, or maybe you can have a subsidy to pay your children's education free by using that skill. I think we need to be creative there. We have no solutions, but I think we need to look at it in a different way, because otherwise this disconnect that exists in the long-term objectives, in which everybody's in agreement, in the short term, which is very little is happening, I think it's the biggest challenge that we have. Well, we are launching multiple programs, like a little bit taste of. We're trying to get this going, get people excited with it, but you know, to be honest, not gaining the traction that we would like to get. And as a final thoughts here, and a little bit also an ask to you and to this community, we're doing pilots to experiment, and as many as we do, probably as fast we're going to learn and to experiment. And we basically ask you if you want to test some of these ideas with us, if you have things running that we can take the advantage and to try to apply that knowledge, please talk to us. We're going to leave our contacts. The second one is this short-term gratification. This micro certificate, how can I redeem in something that it's of value for me? How can a company also redeem in something that it's valuable to them, an investment, if they take the responsibility to actually retrain their people, or maybe for the state also, something like that. And also, because we're, I mean, this is not for profit. This is a for business perspective, although very much and for purpose also. It's a combination. But also, we believe that maybe around how can we fund this, it's part of the solution. So we're also trying to develop and experimenting in new funding mechanisms. So basically, this is us. We're partnering with edX. We're partnering with Microsoft, not only, but Microsoft has been a good partner in terms of getting the online content. Obviously, the industry board and a couple more companies also engaging with people from the education system. And we see this as more like an inclusive working group to actually to address a problem that we believe is really a challenging problem for the societies today. So thank you very much.
We have time for a few questions.
How do you manage the content creation of your courses? Like, is there a model that you use, or
Well, great question. Thank you. We're trying not to reinvent the wheel. I mean, that's why we're partnering with edX and to partners like Microsoft. We're trying to use the best-in-class proven content in terms of the digital. In terms of the classroom and more the human skills, we're trying to get good, reputed instructors on the different fields. In order to get a professor to train you on communication or critical thinking, we're really bringing two together people that usually don't work together. So we're trying to get a little bit the best of breed approach on the human skills, which tends to be local. You have to put in a local flavor. So we're trying to maximize the power of the global content proven MOOCs and with local specific knowledge.
And what was the name of the technology you used for the gamification?
It's GFoundry. GFoundry. GFoundry.com.
And how did you choose that? Was that
Yeah, it's a Portuguese company. Actually, I'm a partner and the founder of this company. It's a Portuguese company of digital engagement. So you use, because integrated with Xblogs and LTI, we can integrate the application. At the moment, the triggers for the rewards, and also integrate content, because we can have the typical quizzes on edX with lots of information. Then we can extract some information to challenge the learner to do some quizzes in an easy and quick way.
And we believe it's very interesting that we can have that integrated and have that capability. For us, it's not so linear that people that are in a stage of their careers that they will react to a game to try and challenge. Yesterday, Fiona also mentioned that it's not so clear that people will react to the typical gamification. But more than gamification, is a digital interaction tool that we can learn how to engage people on different stages of careers, different motivations.
What were the specific metrics and KPIs that you used to define the success of the pilot program?
Well, it's early days. We hope to get there soon, but I would say it's probably employability, or let's say upskilling in terms of position. You can measure that on pay level or whatever. It's basically what can people do with that. So I think it's a very important question and an answer that we have to give. How can we actually guarantee that there's an outcome that it's applicable on the short term? Because without that, again, I think we're stuck on the long term, which is nice, but not good enough for the problem that we're trying to face.
Another round of applause for speakers.
Okay. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you all. Isto.
Presentation. And so I would like to know a little bit more. Can I connect with you over email?
Definitely.
Because that's particularly about gamification plus the classroom, the way you design.
Yeah.
We do a lot of corporate training. We're trying to see how some of this can be used.
Okay,
So
definitely.
we're very happy. Is it also possible to get some access to some of these courses just to see, to get a
Yeah,
sense
I mean,
of it?
you can go into our website.
Okay.
And, you can get into our platform, also into the gamification platform.
Okay.
So,
Do I need to register, right?
no, well, there's a lot of open things there.
Okay.
You can just send us an email.
I will send you
We'll
an
fix
email.
it. Okay.
Thank you. It's a great presentation.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
So, you know, if at all, thank you. That's really, I was very interested in the gamification part also. I work with the government. Actually, I'm academic, but the government of India is trying to see how we can do some, you know, kind of stuff with AI and gamification and so on to promote learning in schools and colleges. So that's where the connection is. If you do come to India,
Where
and I'm really based in Bangalore.
Bangalore?
So just let me know and I'll be happy to host you.
Definitely, yeah.
Or we do an event every January. It's called the Future of Learning.
Okay.
Where we
That's
have,
very interesting.
so I would like to invite you. If you would like to come in, it is just perfect.
Thank you very much.
you know.
Definitely consider that. Can you, when you send
I
us
will
an
send you a
email,
link with-
yeah, that'd be great because it's a good time to plan that.
Yes, it's a good time, and also we have policy makers and bureaucrats and
Yeah,
so on.
and I love that.
Okay.
I
Will you
love
be
the
in
energy.
Nigeria?
Oh, yeah, several times.
Then you should say, just let me know.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
One
bye-bye.
last, question I want to ask you. The mouse that you are using,
Yeah,
it highlighted certain portions.
yeah.
So what device is that? Because
It's a
not so common.
Logitech, is this? Yeah. It's
That's
not so
right.
common.
This is not so common, isn't it?
Yeah, no. It's a Logitech model.
What is this model called? Because it's very,
I can send you the spec
it's really nice.
because it's brand new.
I'm always experimenting, and and
I'll
this,
send you.
everybody
It's
uses
very
the,
useful to focus the people on the.
yes, the Logitech model.
Yeah, I'll send you the spec.
That'll be great.
Right on Amazon.
Thanks.
See you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
I'm Jennifer, I'm from edX, so I will be helping you guys do like timing sessions.
Thank you. Let me take this.
Yeah.
That's it. All right. So we'll start in 5 minutes.
Yeah. I can introduce you guys, but could you help me just pronounce everyone's name so I get it correct?
Yes.
Oh, here.
My name is Ignacio Despujol.
Ignacio. Okay.
Despujol. Leonardo Salom and Carlos Turro.
Okay. And this is MOOCs to see, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna take these, so I will give you guys like timelines as well. So, yeah.
There's gonna be plenty of time.
Okay.
Don't worry. I
Okay.
think we will have even time for questions, and then you will have time because I don't have so many things to say.
Okay, no worries.
It depends on if I get it a little bit technical or not, but I don't think it's the audience. So let's see.
Okay, cool.
A ver, tengo esta aquí. Esta aquí. ¿Dónde estás, corazón? ¿Qué pasa? Sí, señor. Como siempre, 2 minutos antes para ir a la noche. No, ya está todo. No, de hecho, me había puesto en un pendrive y todo. Es que no me traje los 30 cursos, ¿te acuerdas que no funcionaba? Esta mañana me han mandado los gigas, que no tenía que bajarlo, me han mandado los cursos nada más. Pero yo también estoy haciendo entonces. Ayer intenté y que no van a internet, me para $5 porque me dio un router que luego no iba. Y la hice un poquito y llegué en autobús, venía en autobús y había 2 que son mexicanos. Iba ahí con el ordenador. Bueno, estoy aquí acabando. Ya te hemos visto en el autobús. No sé cuánto, no sé si llega de los 20 minutos. Mira, yo estaba uno a ver aquí que no a vernos. A ver. Yo estaba la de tranquilizas mucho. Me tranquilizas muchísimo. Bueno, yo me voy por ahí. Venga, cuando termines con las pancartas y tal. Sí, tengo aquí a Miguel. Estás John, estás tú. Hombre, que menos, ¿no? Que menos. I think so. Put the cable. Are you going to be along to Yes. Yes.
You're doing that a lot?
Yes.
Yes.
Make sure your glasses don't hit.
No, I'm going to put them out. Yes, I've recorded some kind of 1,200 videos or something like that. So. And now I need. Is it fine? 1, 2, 1, 2. Fine.
Can I just do something?
All right. Yes.
Is that okay with you? Just because I'm gonna do it like that.
Yeah, you put it. It's your microphone, so you know how to. That's fine.
Here we go.
I think I'm gonna. No, I leave this one.
Do you need a remote for your computer to advance the slide?
But I can do it with my hand if you want. Do you have the USB?
Yes. Here.
Let's see if it works. Then I have to switch to. Let's see. Old computer. Don't worry. No, it doesn't. Don't worry. I think it's more. Try another USB. I think it's more a fault of my computer than your system. Nice. The thing is, I have installed one program to let the USB port charge big things, and perhaps it's interfering because sometimes it happens. Don't worry, because I have something in the. I can pass it. Yes, I can use my finger like that. So the only thing is I won't be moving so much, but. No more partners coming, only myself. It's just me presenting. We have done it all three, but it's just me.
It's okay if you're not moving so much because the camera is filming this start over here and to the door.
All right, so I'm not going to move.
Okay. Have a good presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, I am Ignacio Despujol from Universitat Politécnica de Valencia. We have been making MOOCs since 2013. In fact, I can see several friends here sitting in the presentation because we have been in the business for some years now, and we are edX partners from the end of 2014. And we have a local open edX platform called UPVX, where we run local courses, the first edition of our MOOCs and our SPOCs. Now we are around 1,200,000 enrollments in all the platforms. So, and we have like 60-something MOOCs between the two platforms. And we have committed to make 20 more MOOCs per year with edX for the next 3 years. So we are making MOOCs as a factory. The thing is that we also have a collaboration with Saharaui people. Probably you don't know about that because it's quite far from here and it's a very local thing. But the Sahara was the last colony of Spain. And in 1975, when we were in the transition from the dictatorship to the democracy in Spain, we were negotiating the decolonization on that, and Morocco, they decided that they didn't agree, and they invaded Sahara, and they have been in war until, in fact, they are still in war, but they have been probably 10 years without conflict. And Morocco occupied most of the Sahara, and the Sahrawis were left in some refugee camps in Argelia, and they conquered part of the land. So now they are something like that. This is the Sahara that is now governed by Morocco, and this is what they have now. They have some refugee camps in the Sahara desert in the border of Argelia. So they don't have too many resources, they don't have water, they live mostly on the international cooperation, and the United Nations is still negotiating, trying to solve the conflict, but they are not advancing too much. And in 2012, they created a university, the Tifariti University, that because they have installed basic education in all the refugee camps for all the children, but they don't have higher education. They are sending people to Spain and to France for their higher education, and they are now trying to. They founded it in 2012, and they're going slow, but they are trying to expand this university, and they have collaborations with several Spanish universities. And in the framework of this collaboration, we send them infrastructure. We send them refurbished computers that they use for their computer classrooms. And in between, I think, February and March, we were going to send a couple of our IT personnel, a couple of mates from my department, with several computer classrooms to help them set them up and help them start working with them. And then we told the girls that were going to Sahara, why don't you, as you're going there, why don't you carry all our courses or the courses that they are most interested in? Because a lot of the Sahrawis, they speak Spanish, they don't speak English. Why don't you bring them one OpenEDX instance? Why don't we install it here in Valencia in one of the computers, and you bring it there, and then they will have all these courses for using in the campus. And they told us that it was not a very good idea because they don't have, they have very few IT personnel and they are not very skilled. And sending them a Unix server with Django and with everything was not the best idea because they don't have the resources. And also using our platform, using our UPVX or using edX, wasn't also possible because they have very bad internet access in the refugee camps. They tell me that in the mobile phones of the people, they are starting to have better internet, but the LAN connections, perhaps they have 1 megabyte per second for all the what they call wilaya, that is all the refugee camp. So this was not a very good idea. And then that's why we thought of this idea of standalone open online courses. The idea is nothing more than exporting the OpenEDX to the targc file that you all know if you are working with OpenEDX, and then using HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and JavaScript to give them a part of the courses, the most that we could implement with this without having a central platform. So you can install all the courses in a pen drive and bring it to anywhere, and they can be used in any computer offline. What we do is to bundle all the content in a folder, and the process was, what it does is it connects to the targc, sees the structure of the course, creates the HTML, and then downloads the videos from YouTube in the resolution that you want. You can choose one or several resolutions depending on the computer and depending on the space you have. And then it creates a structure of folders, and you can create with another process an index that you have all the courses, and you can select one or the other. You can have it in a one pen drive, or you can have it in the local hard disk or in a local server. The exercises, the problems that they can do is multiple choice, text and number types exercises. No open response assessment, no drag and drops. We could have work a little bit to transform some of the graphic types, for example, drag and drops and other types that can be converted into JavaScript, but it was a little bit more of work, and we didn't have the time at the moment. There are no communication tools, there is no forum, there is no user progress page, because you only have the JavaScript that tells you if you are right or wrong. Nothing is stored in the computer. It has. We could have thought about that, but we consider that probably the same student were not going to use the same computers. So putting the grades in one computer that cannot be migrated. So it's only a tool to learn. It's not something where you keep your progress and these kind of things. It really is a command line Python script where you can select the course you want and the file. If you don't select any course or any file, it takes all the folders in the folder where you are running the script and tries to generate all the courses. You can select also the resolution of the videos. If it tries to download these resolutions, one or several resolutions from YouTube, and if it's not possible, it downloads the resolution that it can, and it tells you that it's downloading all the resolution because you don't have it. You get something like this, where you get the static content of the course, the subtitles, and the videos downloaded at the resolution you want. And then you get, I'm going to show it later with one folder that I have here. You get the course description from the OpenEdX platform, and you get the content. And then you have an index of all the courses on the platform. I have brought a pen drive with something like 30 courses, but it has given me an error, the zip file, and it has been impossible to get it. So this morning they have sent me 2 gigabytes with only, 1 gigabyte with only 2 courses. That's what I'm going to show you. You're going to see only 2 courses, not 20, but I think that is enough to see what I'm talking about. What the code does, if you are a little familiar with the structure of the courses in OpenEdX, it follows the tree of the TarGC, the XML, and it starts analyzing course, chapter, sequential, vertical block, and it has 3 different blocks. It works with video, HTML, and problem blocks, and it generates the HTML with this. It's in GitHub. You have it here. I'm going to show a little bit of the code, but only just to show you that it's very simple code that anyone that knows a little bit about Python and a little bit about OpenEdX can work with it. I'm not going to go too much into it. Let me see. Here is the GitHub. In the presentation you have, sorry about this. In the presentation you have the email address of the programmer who has programmed it. So if someone has any doubt, it's also in GitHub. It's not me, it's one of the members of my team. And you can see here in the code, for example, I'm going to do it very fast. It's 200 and something lines of code. And what it does is, for every subdirectory if there is an argument with a subdirectory, it generates it with this file, and if there's no argument, it goes to the same subdirectory and goes one after another. First, it takes, this is the main subroutine, and you say for every file in listdir in every directory, it gets the root of the XML tree, and it goes first, I'm going to show you very fast. First, it takes, this is the init, and it takes the chapter, generate chapter content, get sequential, get vertical, and then you have one for problems, that is the one that is bigger, generate problem, generate HTML, generate video. All these subroutines are called from within the main subroutine. And then you have one for the chapter title, one for the footer, and one for the header, the title. And then you have one more to get the video from YouTube, and nothing more. And then you have one recursive override, just in case there's something in the subdirectory to overwrite it. And the other subroutine that is even simpler is the one that if you have all the courses in one folder, it generates an index so you can navigate. And this one is, you can see that is perhaps 100 lines, and it's the same. It follows the subdirectories and takes the course information and generates. And what is generated? I'm going to go here. Here you can see this portable the subdirectory, where a couple of courses have been generated: bases matemáticas derivadas, bases matemáticas integrales, and the index. I've already opened this thing here. You can see the index here, only with the courses. If you click on one of the courses, you get, sorry, I'm going to click again. You get the course about page from OpenEDX with the same content. And if you click ir al curso, I have it open here. You go here and you get, for example, this is the HTML text content. Here is the video. In this case, I think it's downloaded with 575p, and here you have it has math-jax, so it can understand LaTeX. And here you have, for example, I don't know which is the one that is right. Let's try. This is wrong. I think it's the second one. Yes, and you have correct answer. This is the only thing. And that's all, folks. This is what I wanted to tell you. If there are any questions. The thing, yes, I can tell you more. As it has been 2 to 3 months ago, we still don't have any feedback from the field if they are using it or they are not using, because it's not very easy to know what's happening there. When our people go there, they know, but then the contact is not so fluent. Next time we go there, we will try to see. The idea is that you can use that for anywhere that you want to go. You can bring with a pen drive of 128 gigabyte, you can bring a very big installation. I think that 30 gigabyte were something like 30 courses or something like that. With it was with 576p. If you get the 720p videos, probably it's a little bit more, but you can put in 128 gigabyte pen drive, you can put probably 30 to 40 courses with 720p. And that's it, yeah?
So this is great, by the way. The one question that I have is that if since you're exporting it into HTML, and if there are like graded assessments with answers that people are not supposed to see, since it's HTML, people can see them, right? Is that like a risk?
Can see what?
The answers to the questions.
Yes, you have JavaScript,
yeah.
And it says if you've got the correct answer. And I don't know if we incorporated it, but because these courses didn't have feedback, but you can add that the JavaScript shows you the feedback you have in the system. Because you can, in OpenEDX, you can add a feedback for each different answer of one question. And I don't know if Leo incorporated it because the courses we were sending didn't have the feedback in OpenEDX at the moment, but it would be very easy to take the feedback text and show it here instead of, but you are not getting grades or anything. It's not being stored anywhere. It's just JavaScript that shows you an answer, but you can have different feedback if you want, for example.
Yes.
This program generates a lighter version of the same MOOC that you have.
The program, what it does, it gets you rid of the platform. With OpenEDX, you can generate a file to change one course from one platform to the other that is in tar.gc format. That it generates all the content, but all the content of the course, but the videos is bundled in a tar.gc format. All right. I don't know if with the latest version of OpenEDX that in edX they are moving out from YouTube, it has got the video. But when you have the videos in YouTube, in the tar.gc format, you don't have the videos. So what it does is it takes this file, parses it, and converts it in HTML, the parts that it can convert. For example, all the open response assessment problems are not converted because you cannot use it because they are developed to be used online with several partners. So what it does is it takes the videos, the HTML, and the problems of multi-choice text and numeric response format, and it generates HTML and JavaScript that can be used in any computer or in any mobile because as it's bootstrap, it is responsive and it adapts to the screen. And then with a pen drive, you can bring the courses whenever, wherever you want.
But you're not storing anything back from like the course?
No, because this is devised for a place where you don't have any internet, you don't have anything. So you could elaborate if you want to store. Yes, you could store things in for example, in a text file and send it to a server or whatever, but then you are complicating things. We wanted it as simple as possible to avoid any problems. Yeah, it's like is the content of the course where you can. It's like a book. It's like an ebook for example, in the iPhone where you can. Practice with the questions and things. It's not exactly a book, but similar to, for example, when you get an ebook of the iPad.
You said there's transcripts that get shipped with the videos?
Yes.
How are they displayed?
They are displayed because you can display with the player, you can display transcripts. Yes, you're using a player. We're using a player that can use transcripts. I don't know exactly if this one is our player, but we have an open source player that's called Playa Player that is developed for Matterhorn project, so we can display transcripts. It can display a couple, 2 videos synchronized. It's not the case, but if we are not bundling a very simple player, but we could be bundling this player instead, because you can, as it's local, you can download it and put it.
Have you thought about having it able to generate an EPUB format?
Not. No, we haven't. But we could be. The thing is that this was an idea because the first idea was converting using all the installing one OpenEDX and sending them a computer with OpenEDX. And in the time framework of perhaps a couple of weeks, we decided that it was not going to be useful for anyone, and we developed this. So it's bare bone, is as simple as possible. Then you can, as you are extracting the content and you are building the HTML, instead of putting HTML, you could add extra tags and make it EPUB or whatever. Or you can, if you want, you could add a mechanism to store the answers and send it and whatever. It's just a very simple project that anyone can span. It's very easy to understand. So anyone who wants to build upon it can do it.
That would be interesting to see how far you can go with this project and maybe add more, I don't know, interactivity, or maybe find a way to give a more similar course that you have built in the
in OpenEDX. The problem with that is not technical. On the technical side, it's only a matter of giving it more time of the programmer. The problem is knowing if they are going to use it on the field. Because what the people that was going there told us is don't do it too complicated because you don't know how they are working there. Make it as simple as possible. And the first challenge is to see if they are going to use it, because we have installed it, we have prepared everything, but we don't know if they have a university that they have 4 degrees, and they should be using because they have math courses, they have a lot of different courses. But the part where we have less experience, but we know by others that it's difficult, is that depending on where you install things, if you complicate them too much, they are not going to use it. So probably it would be a good idea, but the good idea would be following the project or make someone using it and asking for more things instead of deciding that they need more things. Installing this and telling, what do you need more? No, we would like to, because we have this server and we would like to interchange things between the server. Let's do it. Let's build a connection to a central database or to a central text file where we store whatever, depending on what's it. But the other thing is nice, but probably or not, or perhaps you are adding some functionalities that are not going to be used or whatever. But it can be done. It's not too difficult, and we could be doing if we see that in the project they use it and they want more things. Yeah.
Is it easy to add courses to an existing folder? So if you've already sent them, say, a thumb drive with 30 courses,
yes.
Can you add more courses to the front page?
The only thing you have to do is to create the new folders with the program that is automatic, and then regenerate the index. And you send them the HTML that is 4Ks or 5Ks of the new index, and the static folder that, because there is a common static folder with common things, you send them these 2 things, and they change the index file, and they have the new courses. Because as every course is in a different folder, they are completely independent. You only have to regenerate the index. Yes, next time that, as we have a collaboration with them, next time that our people goes to the university, we'll follow. And we are trying because they have returned perhaps one month and a half ago. So we have asked them, and they told us, we installed it now, and perhaps in 4 to 6 months, we will ask them. But sometimes if you ask them, you don't get the real picture. So we are planning for the next visit to see what happens with that. Yes, of course. I'll try to if the things that we find out, I'll try to disseminate. I don't know how to do it, but we will make a blog post in our UPBX blog, but I don't know how.
Maybe through, I think edX normally has a wiki page for conference for all the presentations, all the slides.
Yes. We can, when we have something, probably in six months to 1 year, we will upload it and make the.
Do those computers would those computers be able to have, let's say, a little Apache server attached to it? Because then you could use PHP and write logs from the.
Yes, the idea was. The idea was to installing. The problem of a server is that you need someone to maintain it.
Well, sort of, but like if you just have like a little PHP, like a little Apache server, it basically never goes wrong. So you could all you really need is just to serve the PHP and then just to write logs, right? Yes. So yes, it is a little. I have some of these Apache servers, and we don't. Sometimes they have problems. But we know how to do it, and for us it's nothing. But depending on the IT personnel you have, something that for you is as easy as go to the service, restart it, see if the configuration file is fine. So we could do that, but we don't know if it would be, the thing is that at first we wanted to send a complete OpenEDX server already configured that if you don't touch it, usually it doesn't fail. But if you don't upgrade it and you don't do anything strange, but we decided you could add whatever you want. For us, adding a common Apache server would be very easy because we have them in the university. But if they ask something like that, we would do that. You could do that very easily. Instead of getting the pen drive and putting all the files in all the computers, you could put all of them in one central server and connect and make the JavaScript send the results with a user ID. Then you would need to use some kind of authentication. You need to add some kind of, but you could be doing that. So, thank you very much. Esto es mío. Thank you, bye-bye. Bueno. Esto al final han sido 15 minutos de presentación.
Thank you for sharing the source code of the script too.
Thank you.
It's a fantastic project.
Yeah, you can use it, and if you modify it and do things, we can collaborate if you want.
Awesome, yeah. And I'd be interested to hear what the feedback is so we know what the future directions are.
All right.
I think it's a fantastic project.
Bye-bye, thank you. Tell me.
I work at edX, and
Hi.
right now I'm working with like a volunteer group that's
Yes.
trying to export courses and bring them into prisons or other places that there isn't a good internet connection.
Yes.
So we're actually trying to work on like doing things like for the new courses that have videos not in YouTube, like downloading those YouTube
those videos from
into Tarball and including those in the Tarball, and then being able to put that on like a small like Raspberry Pi computer and then send that out to any.
The thing is that you send the computer already configured is better because you have the server. But the experience of the people that goes on the field is that sometimes the first time they have a problem, and with this you have JavaScript, HTML, so it's the browser, and that's it. And that was the idea, but you can elaborate. In fact, as I said, our idea was first sending an OpenEDX server with everything installed.
Yeah, that's what we've been exploring.
Hi, Deepak.
Thank you very much. Nice talking to you. I'm a teacher at IIT Bombay.
I know you,
Okay. So we are facing a similar problem, but of a much greater magnitude, because in our schools, they cannot afford even servers and LAN and computers. So we are working jointly with another open source group called XTEF, where an Arduino-based gadget has been constructed, which acts as both as a Wi-Fi connect point to all the phones,
Yes.
small devices. You don't need a projector in the class or nothing. And that Arduino device is actually able to take some of their platform code,
Yes.
XTEF code. Now we'll be working on doing something similar to what you're doing, because that Arduino box itself can be made into some kind of a server which can run some basic code. But OpenEDX is too heavy to run.
Yeah.
So you do need a server there, and that's a challenge still. But this approach of just using HTML, and this is excellent. I just saw that code. How did you manage to compact everything in such a small?
No, it's only, in fact, the most heavy thing is the videos.
Yeah,
the rest is the HTML and text, and JavaScript is already incorporated in all mother browsers. So you can even do much more things. We didn't have time, but you can add drag and drop and whatever.
So what we are going to do is we are going to put a large capacity SD card which can have the portion of the course that we want to give
Yes.
to the school children. And that can be downloaded. It's an offline kind of thing.
Yeah.
We are also trying to see whether some of the activities that the students do can be captured and can be brought back.
This would be another step that you could be doing on text files, for example, sending them that the platform sends to a central server with a code for the student, or this kind of thing.
Wonderful work.
So, nice to meet you. And if you want to do something more or whatever, you can write me down. I don't have any card, but I will.
I also don't have card, but on the GitHub, is there a connection?
Yeah, there's a connection with Leo, the programmer, and I also at some point I send you an email when we met in a former edX or something.
I will look at
so
that.
I will look for it and send you an email again.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Always. Yes.
I missed the earlier portions. I guess it's on the GitHub. Where would I find it? Is there a URL?
What?
What's the project?
The project GitHub. You want to it? I don't know, but I can. If you want, do you have a phone? You can make a photo.
I also have the link if that's helpful. Yeah, I just copied it down. So
in the GitHub, you have the contact of Leo, that is the programmer that has made it.
Yeah, it's your number. 651. Okay, let me copy this real quick. Oh, that works.
Actually, I don't mind getting contact.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you much. Hi.
I'm the founder of Blast Central.
353.
Ah.
We are like a search engine for MOOCs.
Yes. I know you very well.
Yeah.
It's very nice to meet you. Yes. In fact, I read your reports, your end year reports, and yeah.
It's great to see you investing so much in online courses.
We are trying to do things, and in fact, we usually develop small things to work in our open edX and in our edX instance, but this time we decided to do that.
Yeah, so you use the MOOCs internally, flip class?
Yes, we have a very big flip classroom initiative. Let's go to the table right there so we can. Sorry, mis gafas. Oops. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm stealing your microphone. Sorry. Vamos a ver. Yeah, can you, so I don't break it?
There we go. Thank you.
An interesting problem.
Now everybody can hear you. You can put it on the packet, or yeah, exactly there.
May I ask you to talk a little bit so I can hear you?
Sure.
Okay. Here it's like, oh, you're talking to me around KDE.
Yes. Yes.
I tried using their presenter view. They don't have a really good presenter view.
Yeah. There's that.
A lot of people have between each other the same thing. Some
Right. I did have some speaker notes, so that's part of why I was trying out the presenter mode.
I actually really use Google Slides much. So I'm more comfortable with dual screen.
Alright, what's happening here? Ah, there we go. That's where the notes are.
I'm just used to like the PowerPoint one where like you can actually see the slides.
An actual team where the specific part of downloading. You hit F11, it'll go.
Yep.
I can also send you a link to.
You guys use SaltStack?
Yeah.
Do you use Ansible too, or you just use SaltStack?
We use so we use SaltStack to run Ansible.
You add your own Rube Goldberg machine onto.
Yes. But I stripped out a lot of the Rube Goldberg aspects of your repository by managing all the external dependents, like all the external services using SaltStack instead of Ansible. And is there a clicker that I can use, or I can just use the arrow keys if I? All right, no worries.
Everything's good?
Yeah.
So I'm in the edX room here.
Oh, good.
You're on the show. Take one train in the morning. Yeah. You go in the morning there. For example, John coming from. I'm supposed to announce you, so that's the title of your talk.
Yes.
No worries. So Tobias Macey from.
MIT Open Learning.
Open Learning.
Yep. And I've got
Did I
the.
get your name pronounced right?
Yep.
Close enough.
Yeah. And then I've got.
Your name's pretty easy in Phonetic.
And I've got the about slide too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll just introduce you, then you come up and do your talk, and I'll just sit in the front corner and
Yep.
keep time. This session starts at 11:30 and it's supposed to end at 12:05. So
Yep. 5 more minutes.
Yep, I'll keep time so open. So there's a clock in the back there, so.
Yep. Yeah, and I've got my.
For noon.
Yeah, I've got a timer on my watch I was going to set to give me my 5-minute warning. In case I ignore you.
I'll just wait furiously until. Okay.
No, I was just trying to come up with a talk name, and I was like, just played out that way. I only had to fabricate one of them. All right. Hello. So as you mentioned, I'm going to be talking about how we use open source immutable infrastructure for running the MITx residential deployment of OpenEdX. So I'm Tobias Macey. I'm the DevOps manager and team lead at the Open Learning Department of MIT. And I also host a couple of podcasts about Python and data engineering, and links on the slides, which I'll be publishing later. So just to give a few definitions at the outset, when I talk about immutable infrastructure, I mean deploying new instances in place of old ones and destroying the old ones rather than doing in-place updates of code, because that can lead to configuration drift, which is what happens when you have a server that doesn't match the desired state because of having it long running, because of doing continual updates in place that leads to highs and bugs or uncertain or unreliable deployments. And by open source infrastructure, I just mean having all of the code that we use publicly available for reference and for other people to take and adapt for their own uses. So everything I'm talking about now is available open source, BSD3 clause licensed on our GitHub, and there'll be links later on. I also gave a talk about this idea at DevOps Days Boston last year. There's a link for that if you're curious. So MITx Residential is the online course platform that's used by MIT students. There are 30 to 50 courses run each semester. There are over 90 faculty and instructors who take advantage of the platform, either for running their courses in a blended format or flipped classroom environment, or just for doing experimentation. There are over 4,000 undergraduate students at MIT who either are using or have used the platform, and which covers 91% of the student body that are currently there that have used it for some portion of their coursework. So to give an overview of some of the tooling that we're using for managing all of this, our primary tool is SaltStack, which we use for cloud provisioning, cloud automation, doing our configuration management, as well as doing reactive and event-driven automation. We use Vault from HashiCorp for our secrets management, which we have integrated with SaltStack. And again, all this is open source. And we use that very heavily for dynamic credentials, where it will automatically create users and passwords in our various databases and backend systems, as well as for things like AWS IAM roles. We're using Consul for service discovery, using the DNS interface because it makes it easier to manage the same settings across environments. And by using the DNS interface, it reduces the amount of additional code or modification that's necessary to be able to use existing projects like OpenEdX in place in our environment. And lastly, we are using the Ansible repository from edX for installing and updating some of the configurations for the edX applications, and I'll talk more about where that fits in. So a bit more about what SaltStack is and why we use it is it's an automation framework with batteries included. So we use it, I introduced it when I started at MIT because it's very modular and extensible, so it's easy to build it to fit rather than having an end product that you have to then create a bunch of additional layering to do exactly what you want it to do. It's very scalable. You can run it all the way from a single server up to multiple data centers, with folks like LinkedIn using it for a lot of their automation, and it's event-driven. So rather than doing very push-oriented where you have to SSH into each server, it has an event bus where it will publish commands to the various minions, and it will also receive events back so that you can then have reactive capabilities based on that. And so the layers that we have for our infrastructure for managing the MITx residential platform starts with the VPC and subnets and the S3 buckets. All of these are created and managed with SaltStack. And then once we have that up and running, we deploy the Consul cluster so that it's there. As we add in new services, it will automatically pick up those automatically pick up those services and make them available and discoverable to other systems as they come online. Part of the reason that we deploy it first is that it allows us to then hook up the Vault server to the database backends as they come online so that they're ready to go as new services get added in. And so next we deploy RDS running MySQL for the edX platform. We also use the EFS volumes for NFS share for storing all of our course static assets so that they can be shared between instances. And we use the Elasticache service for memcached for managing the Django cache across the different instances. Once all those are online, we use Salt to provision and configure the storage services that edX requires. So in this case, RabbitMQ for Celery and XQ, although that's removed with Hawthorne, MongoDB for the databases, and then Elasticsearch for forum indexes. After all those are provisioned and clustered and set up, we then go ahead and deploy the edX applications, and this is where the Ansible piece comes in, where we actually provision the instances with SaltStack. We use SaltStack to clone the Ansible repository on disk, set up all of the vars that we want to use for propagating through, and then we execute it against localhost. And SaltStack, and then the service discovery allows all of those instances to then connect up to the various backing services. So MongoDB for content store, module store, Git logs, and then after we've deployed the instances, verified that they're running and healthy, we then connect them up to an ELB for load balancing and to make them publicly accessible. And so that's the final architecture. The benefits here is that the application instances themselves and the worker nodes are completely stateless, which makes it much easier for scaling. So the scaling factors here are we can scale the app instances up or down in terms of number of instances and size of instances. Similarly for the workers, based on load or usage patterns, the Rabbit and Console, Mongo, all those services can be scaled horizontally or vertically as needed to accommodate load and increased usage or decreased usage. EFS scales automatically just by the number of files that you write to it, and RDS we can increase or decrease the instance size as needed. And then we also use multi-AZ failover for the instance. Another interesting side effect of this is that we have at MIT the notion of draft versus live instances and data storage services for professors who use an XML-based authoring workflow rather than relying on Studio. So that way they can push their repositories up to GitHub. They get published to what we refer to as the draft servers, so that they have a preview environment that are independent of the actual live servers for being able, which once they're satisfied with their course, they then publish to the master branch, which gets rendered onto the live servers for public viewing and for students to take advantage of it. Another thing that's not shown here is that we actually have 2 load balancers currently, because the Studio instances do require sticky sessions for some operations, particularly things like course imports and exports, because there is some statefulness in those operations where the course gets rendered onto disk before being pushed or pulled from GitHub. And so we needed to have a second load balancer to allow for sticky sessions on Studio while not having it on the LMS servers, because having sticky sessions causes a lot of load to be pinned to one instance when you have a lot of students using it simultaneously for things like exams or things like that. In terms of how the actual application instances are deployed, we start with bare instances, just running the base Ubuntu operating system. We then clone the Ansible repositories on disk. We use the SaltStack agents to render the Ansible vars files on disk for setting up the configuration values that we need for the different environments. And then we execute the Ansible playbooks locally for installing edX, installing forums, etc. There are a few pieces that we actually override from the Ansible repository, such as some of the Nginx templates, so that we can customize how static assets are looked up on disk. We will occasionally write our own playbooks to call into the various Ansible roles so that we can customize which pieces are being used. And there are a couple of things that we do both before and after the Ansible run to hack around some of the pieces that we don't necessarily want to use. So for instance, the static assets directory, we mount to NFS, and there was just some weirdness around how Ansible wanted to manage it versus how we wanted to manage it. So we sort of wrap Ansible with SaltStack so that we can get everything that we need out of it without having to re-implement all of the Ansible code and logic at the same time. Once the instances are provisioned, we have a set of instance tests that we run. So we unit test the instances for things like make sure this file's on disk, it has these contents, it's listening on these sockets, etc. And assuming all of that comes up successfully, all the tests pass, then we will go ahead and snapshot the instances to build an AMI. So once the AMIs are built, we will then use those to deploy into our QA environment. So at build time, we just deploy a worker and an app instance, and then we use those as the template for all the other deployments that we do. Once the instance is deployed from the AMI, the only thing that's necessary is updating some of the configuration values, primarily the credentials for connecting to databases, et cetera. And because we use Vault with the dynamic credentials, each instance gets its own set of username, password, so that it's actually easier to audit the connection. So if, for instance, something did get compromised, you can see exactly which instance was connecting, which one was compromised, and then you can just terminate, redeploy, and you can mitigate some of the security risks that way. We actually leverage heavily the tags in the Ansible repository where there's the install :configure, so that the only thing that happens at deploy time is rendering and updating those configuration values, the JSON files, so that there's much less churn in terms of operations performed at deploy time, so that we can be confident about the fact that the instances that we're running in QA and production are essentially the same thing. And then again, we do some smoke checks to make sure that the instances are healthy, that they're behaving as intended before we add them to the load balancer. So one of the benefits of the way that we are managing all this infrastructure is that we actually have multiple versions of edX platform running in our QA environment simultaneously, and they're actually using a lot of the same backing services. So we will back up the production databases, Mongo, MySQL, and then restore them to QA so that we can be confident about our upgrade paths to make sure that the database schemas, the actual data in the database that we're using for testing those upgrades and those migrations is exactly what we're going to run into in production so that we don't get surprised when we get to that point. And so the way that we do that is we keep the current version that we're supporting in production running, and then we deploy the next version alongside it. So in our case, we're using Ginkgo right now in production. We're getting ready for Hawthorne. And we separate logically, but we keep the services shared for cost effectiveness so that we don't have to run 2 copies of absolutely everything in the infrastructure. We just have to duplicate the app nodes. So we can share Mongo, we can share Rabbit. So for RabbitMQ, we have separate vhost definitions so that Ginkgo writes to one set, Hawthorne writes to the other set. We don't worry about tasks being published and picked up by the wrong instances. Similarly, for MySQL, we have separate databases or schemas in the actual RDS instance, but we share the underlying hardware. MongoDB has separate database definitions for content store, module store, all the things that we use it for. And then for Memcached, we actually have separate clusters just so that we don't have to modify the key space that they're using, and that way we don't worry about Ginkgo picking up Hawthorne cached objects or vice versa and having everything blow up and create weird bugs that we have, are difficult to troubleshoot. And because of the fact that we're sharing the environments, we're sharing the infrastructure, a lot of our configuration values can be shared across environments, and this is again facilitated by using Console for service discovery, Vault for credential management. So all of the changes in environment are actually just pulled in dynamically at deploy time rather than having to define them ahead of time, maintain a separate set of secrets per environment. Oops. And the code that we use, as I mentioned, is all open source. The Ansible vars we manage with SaltStack. So we have one file that defines the majority of the settings that we want to use across different implementations. And then we have smaller files that we pull in for doing the diffs for things like Ginkgo versus Hawthorne for new features that we want to add or deprecate. running the live versus the draft instances, or for instance, we want to use a sandbox instance in the same environment and use the same underlying hardware. The code that we use to run the Ansible playbooks is just a single state file that will run the operation to clone and execute, and then we just use the pillar data to determine which playbooks get run at deploy time. And just to backtrack a little bit to give a bit of the syntax I'm referring to here, for anybody who's familiar with Ansible, I'll give you some comparisons. So the salt pillars can be associated with Ansible vars, salt grains can be associated with Ansible facts, and Ansible playbooks can be related to salt states. And all of the infrastructure components outside of the actual edX code itself is managed entirely with SaltStack, and we wrote a bunch of formulas to be able to deploy and provision those, and we wrote them to be as generic as possible so that anybody can use them for their own environments, and then they're driven by that pillar data to determine how many instances you use, what the clustering strategy is, various things like that. So most notably in this environment are the formulas for RabbitMQ, Elasticsearch, Console, and MongoDB. And we also have others for Vault, and we also have some states in our core SaltOps repository for being able to deploy and configure RDS instances, Elasticache instances, and again, those are very heavily configuration driven so that there's very little code change necessary to deploy these various services to different environments with different sizes or configurations. So where we were when I first started on all of this project of introducing SaltStack into the MITx residential environment was we had a lot of long-lived instances that we would update in place whenever we needed to issue patches or minor code changes or configuration updates, which led to a lot of that configuration drift that I referred to initially. And because of that, the upgrades were unreliable and unpredictable. They were very slow because we would execute the entire Ansible playbook rather than just updating configuration during the deploys. And that led to some issues where we had things like static assets didn't compile properly, whereas they were working in our QA environment, and we didn't run into this situation until we hit the production environment because there were some of those vagaries and difference between QA and production versus being able to deploy from those static AMI builds that we could verify in each environment independently. The other advantage of doing the immutable deployments is that we are able to deploy new instances and test them before they actually get shown to anybody else in production and verify that they're working, and then before we destroy the old instances. Because of the fact that we had these long-lived instances and we had this more static infrastructure where we had to define all of the connection points and secrets ahead of time, it limited our ability to scale at all the various layers. So we had a certain set of instances, and that was essentially what we were stuck with unless we wanted to do a lot of engineering effort to provision new instances and verify that they were functioning properly. And as I mentioned, the upgrade path was very error prone because we had one QA environment. We weren't able to do that multiple versions at the same time. So when we were getting ready to, for instance, go from dogwood to eucalyptus, we would have to upgrade QA to eucalyptus. And then if we had dogwood fixes, we didn't have a reliable environment to test them in before pushing them to production. So those would end up just getting backed up behind the major version upgrades. Which brings me to where we are right now. As I mentioned, the infrastructure is much more stable and scalable because of those consistent, reliable deployments with known assets that we're building. Having the applications be stateless and immutable makes them much more scalable, easier to reason about, easier to manage. And the multi-version testing environment means our upgrade paths are much are much easier and smoother. We can take our time verifying that we're happy with how things are rather than waiting to the last minute so we don't destroy our testing environment. We can just keep things running as long as we want ahead of time. We can even run an arbitrary number of different versions. We can run older versions if we need to, because everything is logically separated. And so right now we have Ginkgo and Hawthorne, we have a sandbox instance running. We can deploy straight against master if we want to, so we can test all of these various configurations without worrying about destroying our ability to then maintain our production environment. And the modular configuration makes it a lot easier to see what we're actually changing between versions, because you just have to look at one file and there's maybe 10 lines in it versus having to copy an entire file, change everything in place. And the deployments are a lot faster. So the initial build process takes about the same amount of time, but once the AMI is baked, we can actually get new releases deployed into production and running on the order of 5 to 10 minutes versus an hour and a half that it might have taken beforehand. Some of the things that we're looking at going forward are adding in auto-scaling capabilities so that we can more dynamically adapt to usage patterns. So we have some cases where we know ahead of time that there's going to be an exam or a quiz with a certain number of students, so we can preemptively deploy as many instances as we think are necessary. We have had a couple of situations where we saw some usage spikes, and so we were able to add new instances fairly quickly and bring them into production. But being able to do this in an automated fashion without having to have a human operator sitting there watching metrics would reduce a lot of oversight necessary for the platform. We're also looking at picking apart some of the services more. So as I mentioned, we're running the edX app, XQ, and forum all on the same instance. And so being able to spread those out on more instances so that we can scale each of those pieces independently in terms of number and size would give us some more benefits in terms of resource allocation and making sure that we're not oversizing instances just because of some usage spikes on some of the other pieces. Another larger goal that we're looking at is actually taking some of the Ansible roles that we're relying on and re-implementing them as salt stack formulas or as salt stack modules, so that we have a more homogeneous code base and we don't have to rely as much on seeing what's changed, between versions, and we can manage it in a single code base and not have as the other benefit is that this will give us more visibility into the return values. So if there are any failures in Ansible right now, we just get a long printout of standard out and standard error, so you have to manually go through, versus if we were running these all as salt stack, we'd be able to easily identify this is the piece that failed, this is why. So it just aids in debugging and management of our environment. We're also looking at reserved instances. Because we've been running this new architecture for a while now, we have a better idea of what the usage patterns are, what the resource requirements are, so we can actually start setting up reserved instances in Amazon to get some pretty drastic cost savings. And as I mentioned, we are using 2 load balancers because of that need for sticky sessions on Studio versus non-sticky on LMS. So we're considering looking at some of the either alternate Amazon offerings for load balancing or deploying our own load balancing tier using HA Proxy or Nginx or something like that, so that we can have a lot more configurability in terms of how things are routed, how things are configured on a per app basis, rather than having one load balancer that serves everything on an instance at the same time. We're also looking at adding more detailed monitoring and metrics. So one thing I left out of the initial architecture is we use Datadog pretty heavily for our metrics, but we were looking at adding more useful dashboards, instrumenting the instances more, gathering performance data and doing some memory profiling so that we can identify some of the slow spots in our environment and maybe optimize them either through configuration values or instance sizing, doing some tuning there. I also skipped over the log aggregation that we use, so we're using Elasticsearch for a centralized logging architecture, but adding some more processing of the log data that we're getting from edX will give us a bit more visibility into what's happening across the entire environment and be able to identify problem areas before they actually become an issue. And we're also looking at doing more comprehensive unit and integration testing on the instances during the various deploy stages. So we do have the test infra tests that we can use for unit testing instances to make sure that the files are where they need to be, that sockets are listening as they're supposed to. We're using Monet for making sure that edX app instances are able to communicate with MongoDB, et cetera, but having a more thorough test of what's happening at deploy time to make sure that we don't have to spend as much manual time doing smoke checks before we add it to the load balancer would be valuable. And with that, I'd like to open it up to questions. Go ahead.
I believe, I don't know what slide it was, but you talked about being able to back up your database and be able to use both your QA